Aloha my kako, seventh graders. What's up, guys? It's Kumui here. Before I start on this little tutorial on how to complete, this is going to be part one on how to complete this CPT, Common Performance Task, on my favorite recipe. Before I start on part one, I would like to share a joke. The joke is food related, which is cool. What are baby pickles made from? Baby pickles. Baby pickles are made from cucumbers. All right. I'm sure you're glad you don't have to hear my bad jokes at school. All right, guys. So we are going to be working on my favorite recipe, as you see. This is right here. Makalolofai. That's ka'u mai. Lekapi. I'm sure you know what that's a transliteration of. And punahele. So we're looking at ka'u lekapi punahele. All right, so before we go into the specifics, I'd at least like to share some of my favorite foods with you. So we, just to launch this project a little, we're going to be looking at eventually at a recipe for kulolo, as you can see over here. Yep, kulolo over on the left, and we see a wonderful picture of it here. Kulolo is famous, of course, and super popular in our Pai'aina, but super famous in Kauai. So I don't think I've had a chance. Actually, Ho'olaule'a sells kulolo from Kauai, so I really enjoyed that. Some of the other foods I liked, you also have a recipe if you got my mailing packet for chicken katsu. Kumui loves chicken katsu. And if I didn't tell you too much about this yet, this is something I really love. This is like stewed kalbi. They call it kalbi jim right up here. Kalbi jim. And it's Korean style braised short rib. So kalbi is like, you know how it's usually grilled. Super ono, of course. But kalbi jim is in a stew with like a teriyaki, sweet teriyaki sauce spooned over. When you spoon it over rice, it's so good. The vegetables are super ono. So this is also what I enjoy. So these are some of the foods I enjoy eating. I've made kalbi jim once. It's often something similar as kalbi tang, spelled Teng, not tongue as in your mouth. But kalbi tang, if you go to a Korean restaurant and they have kalbi tang, that's also good, but that's more soup-like. Kalbi jim is the stew, which is the bomb. Okay. I've made chicken katsu. I've made kalbi jim. I've never made kulolo, but maybe I can try one of these days. Okay, so let's launch into some specifics about what we need. Let's just go. These are just details about what learning targets we're covering in relation to Common Core standards. You can read those over if you want, but we're basically focusing on solving proportions and percents toward the end, and I'll give you an overview on percents, a brief introduction on percents later. So kaulekapi punahele. This first page is our checklist. You should have all found a recipe already for those in my class, and we're eventually for this part one. We are going to focus on items 2, 3, and 4. So this is going to be part one. Okay, and that's all you need to worry about for our week 2 of our distance learning. Okay, and I'll walk you through that. So basically, we're going to write the recipe in this booklet. We're going to figure out what we need to double, and we're going to figure out what we need to half. Okay, so that's what we need to work on and just focus on for part one. All right, guys, thanks for bearing with. Now, this is your rubric. I'm not sure how this is going to be graded yet. If we were still in school, you would have turned this in. This would have been worth 4. This column, anything in this column which is exceeds is worth 4, meets is 3, approaching is 2, need support is 1, but I promise to be as lenient as I can on grading. And flexible in how you turn this in. What I'm envisioning is you're going to eventually take photos of your booklet and send it in through Google Classroom. Okay, but more details to follow. All right. I should mention you will be graded on recipe adjustment. So this is about proportions. That's what you want to focus on here. Tax, that's at the end of the activity. We'll talk about that in part 2. Problem solving, yeah. How are you figuring out how much of a certain ingredient you need to feed the whole class? And communication, anything written in this booklet, okay? Anything you need to express. All right, and describe. Okay, let's move on. All right, so the ingredients, well, the recipe I want us to look at together is actually this, Kulolo Hawaiian pudding over on the left. So what is this recipe? It must contain at minimum 5 or more ingredients. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as you can see. It contains 5 here. If your recipe contains a little less than 5, let's say 4, it's okay. I'll let you go on that, okay? It should contain at minimum 5 ingredients and include use of units. All right, of course. And number of servings, I'll cue in on that. So for this recipe over on the left, it serves 4 to 6. Because we need to choose, okay, I want us to go with any number you want. Okay, so you can choose 4, 5, or 6, but you've got to pick a number. So for the purposes of this activity, just to make it maybe a little more challenging, I'm going to pick it will serve 6 people, and I'll write it in here. And you could see it serves 4 to 6, so I'm choosing the higher number. But do pick a specific number. All right, so in the ingredients, it's going to take 3 cups. I'm going to write it in, taro. It's going to take 1 cup fresh coconut. And of course, I'm not going to write in everything, but anything here gets transferred here, nice and neat. Okay. Prep time, it's listed on this recipe. It's up in the top, up here. It will be ready in 2 hours, 15 minutes. 2 hours, 15 minutes. And that could be included, prep time, cook time. I don't know how detailed your recipe is. And this is, I would call this comfort food / dessert. Okay, so try to fill in as much detail as you can. This is all related to communication. Okay, this will inform your communication grade. Okay. Some other interesting things, we'll come back to these ingredients. I want to choose the most challenging. So I'm actually going to list for you, to be specific, 3/4 cup brown sugar. Yep, kulolo is nice and sweet, depending on preference, of course, but I like it a little on the sweet side. So let's just focus on that. One recipe which serves 6 people calls for 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. Let's focus on that. Okay. Now, directions. You see the directions here. Okay, the directions listed in my recipe. View directions listed in my recipe. I will copy down here. I can summarize it if I want, but it should make sense to you. You could copy it word for word or summarize the key points so that when you're making it, which you eventually will in a few weeks, when you're making it, it will make absolute sense. Okay, and this is kind of optional. These are notes for, let's say, hey, if you made the recipe once and it was too sweet, this is notes to yourself, reduce sugar, or vice versa. If it wasn't sweet to your liking, you might increase sugar, Okay, these are notes on how to make the recipe better in the future. We're always looking to improve, no? Okay, so that's that page on your recipe booklet. About the recipe. Write a paragraph about the recipe you shared. This need not be long, but just try to fill in, write at least something for every section in this booklet. Who shared this recipe with you? Well, I looked it up. Why? Of course, I want to answer the why, because I love kulolo. Okay? And I'm going to like it more each and every day. Is there anything special about this recipe? I would say it's culturally significant. culturally significant recipe. And probably something similar to what our kupuna would eat. Similar to what kupuna would eat. You might be wondering, did they have brown sugar? Yeah, they definitely had ko. That was a plant. So they would have had sweeteners, of course. Would they have, let's look at this. Would they have had coconut, new? Of course they would have. That's another plant. And of course they would have had kalo. Okay. So what kupuna would eat? Awesome. And I'm sure it was amazing back in the day with fresher ingredients. How's it been used in your family before? That's another question. Yeah. Is there any personal connection? Every year I go to Ho'olale, I do buy kulolo. So that might be one of my personal connections. I might mention something about Ho'olale. Okay. All right. Moving on. Doubling the recipe. Okay, so here I'm just gonna focus in on one of the ingredients, but you should be doing it for all of the ingredients. I'm gonna be doing 3/4 cup of brown sugar. If I doubled that, let's work on fractions. There's a couple ways we can do this. We can do 3/4. If I doubled it, I could add doubling, so 3/4. I want to double my recipe, so I need to add another 3/4. This reminds us how to add fractions. I want you to think about this like 3 forts, like medieval forts. What if we had 3 forts and another 3 forts? Notice the play on words. 3 forts plus another 3 forts. That would be 6 forts. That's why I write 6/4. Okay. And this is a good way. 6/4. If you had a helper, especially your younger sibling, and they ask you, "Hey, how much sugar do we need?" and you told them 6/4, they might not make quite too much sense of that. So maybe we can be friendly to them and let's convert this to a mixed. Okay. So we rotate this away, Tai Chi, this away, if we're trying to turn it into long division. So 6 goes there, 4 goes there. And 4 goes into 6 one time, and we subtract 2. So we've got, this is a remainder of 2. That's 1 2/4. That's equivalent to 1 1/2. Okay, so if I doubled, I would have 1 1/2 cups of brown sugar. And I would do that for all of my ingredients, including, look over on the left here, 3 cups of taro root was original. Well, if I doubled that, that would be 6. There's another way we can double ingredients as well. Let's show some of the work when necessary. 3/4, I could have multiplied it by, like this color, 3/4 times 2. Now 2 can be written as a fraction, as you know. This 2 exists in the numerator, so even if it's in the middle, it's in the numerator. We can always rewrite whole numbers as fractions. As 2 over rhymes with bun. Yes, you guessed it, 2/1. And why don't we cancel before we multiply? Notice though, if we just multiplied straight across the top and straight across the bottom, we would get 6/4, which matched our earlier answer. It's consistent. But let's try to cancel, leaving us 3/2, which does simplify 3 halves. Let me draw 3 halves for you. That's 1/2. That's another half. And here's another half. Those are 3 halves. That is equivalent to 1 1/2, like pizzas or something. In this case, we're talking about 1 1/2 cups of brown sugar, which does agree. It's consistent with the earlier answer. Okay, so that would be that page. If you are looking at your booklet on the next slide, it should be show some work. Yes, absolutely show some work when necessary. And how many people would your recipe feed if we doubled? Well, it originally fed 6, since I use 6 as 6 servings per recipe. And so I would double that. It would feed 12, an even dozen. Kanaka, mai ka'ilo. Okay, any questions, guys? Please email me or email your kumu who may be doing this activity. All right, now half the recipe. This is the end of section 1, okay? So guys, after you fill out the half, I just need you to relax and pause. and just wait for the following week. If you want to go ahead, hey, go ahead though, okay? So again, I'm going to focus on this 3/4 cup because that is probably the hardest to have. 3/4 cup of brown sugar. All right, so how do we have this? Well, I can think of three ways. Well, let's say we're talking about decimals. Well, let's do 3/4. In other words, please listen to my words. 3/4 as a decimal. 3/4 in real life. If I gave you 3/4 in change, 3/4 would be how much money? Well, you should say, hey, that's 75 cents. That used to be enough to catch the bus. I don't think it's enough to catch the bus anymore. But that's 0.75 cups. Now, going back to the last section, just recapping, we could have did the last section doubling too. If we doubled that, that would have been 1.5. Yep. But here in this section, we're focusing on halving. So if you took 0.75 and divide it by 2, you can of course use a calculator, but this should be 0.375 if Kumui is not mistaken. Okay, that should yield 0.375 cups. So one way I could write that is 0.375 cups. That might be kind of tricky because cups don't often come with decimal equivalents, so you might have to think about that. But 0.375, that's a little less than a half. So if you had a half cup measuring spoon, you could just do a little less than half. That might work out nicely for you. Okay. Another way we can do that, although we can confirm that. This is an iPad. 0.75 divided by 2. Let me just show you. We've got calculators at our disposal. 0.75 divided by 2. Bang. Okay. 0.375 indeed. All right. So another way we can do this is, let's talk about this. We could do 3/4. In order to half a recipe, that would be equivalent to taking 3/4 and multiplying it by a half. Yes, reading it this way with the word of there for multiplication, you want half of 3/4. You want half of the recipe, half of 3/4 cup sugar. Okay, and if we did that, we would multiply across the top, across the bottom. Do not try to cancel these. Okay, these are both in the denominator. In order to simplify, you need numerator and denominator canceling because we're basically dividing top and bottom by the same number. In this case, no, you cannot reduce 2 and 4 because they're both in the denominator. Multiplying these, this is 3/8. So you need another way of expressing that is 3/8 of a cup of sugar. This is a little better because you may have measuring cups with eighths. So you just need 3 of those eighths. Okay, and I'll show you yet another way. So first we use decimals. Another way is we multiply by a half because you want half of that amount. Another way, there's a blast from the past, guys. You take 3/4, which is what you had, and you're going to, in this case, divide by 2. Of course, you're going to take the amount you need and divide it by 2. Now, how do you write 2 as a fraction? Well, this is 2 over 1. Do you remember how to divide fractions? I hope so. This is 3/4 dividing by a number is like multiplying by its reciprocal. Reciprocal is the flip of the number. Kumui and your other Kumu have probably taught this to you. Another way, remember I don't need that. Keep. Okay, notice you keep this. You change this and you flip that guy, KCF. Okay, so we've just turned a division problem into a multiplication problem. That is how we're going to half everything. Dividing by 2 should be it's the same as multiplying by half, and you see the connection back here now. Okay, and this is equivalent again to 3/8 cup, okay, which agrees with everything that we've had before. Guys, this is all you need to do. Of course, you need to do it for all of these ingredients. Half everything. The next page asks, hey, how many people can you feed? If you, whoa, is this the double? There may be a typo. Sorry, all of your kumu, all 8 of us, no, 9, maybe 10 of us, all of us have looked at. No one caught that. This word isn't double. This should be half. Okay, if you halved, HALVED, if you halved your recipe, in which case since this originally served 6, 6 is the number we chose between 4 and 6. If we have that, that would feed tree. Okay, or should I write it like this? It would feed tree people. Tree Kanaka. Tree happy Kanaka eating kulolo. Awesome, guys. So that's the end. You can stop here for part 1. Stop here. If you have questions, please direct them to your kumu or happy to kokua you. Everyone, I hope you have a fantastic week and I hope you had a great Easter weekend. Mahalo and ahui ho.